I usually do like a really long intro to these videos, especially on the podcasts, like on the weekends. But I'm not going to do that this week. I want to talk about an album that's really close to my heart because it got me into this genre of music, and for a long time I was mainly just into hip hop, and I was mainly just into a completely different type of music than this. But when I was in like early high school and a little bit before that, I decided to like broaden my horizons and like look into different types of music that I was into. And one of the games that I was playing at the time, funnily enough, was Saints Row 2. And on that game, there was a radio station that just played like pop punk, emo, just like goth music, and I was so into it. It had a hip hop station, but I found myself listening to that one more often. The emo station. And My Chemical Romance was on that, and I did a little bit more look into him, obviously, when I wasn't on the game and when I wasn't at school or anything. I really got into this album that I want to talk about today. But before we get into it, welcome to CTR Radio. My name is Reese, and today we are filming episode 3 of the intro. Today we're going to be discussing one of my personal favourite My Chemical Romance albums, and in my mind, one of the best pop punk albums that came out in this generation of music, especially because it was booming, like 2001 to like 2008. That's like the height of pop punk music. You had like Blink, you had like Sum 41, My Chemical Romance, all these bands just bringing out absolute amazing music. And I just wanted to start by switching up the genre and talking about this album first, because I really think it's important in terms of the stage in the career that they was in, and also in terms of where it led them to go in the future. Because you had this album, you had 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge, and before that you had I Brought You My Bullets and You Brought Me Your Love, which was it was a lot different than this one, because in this one I feel like they really got to show that they could actually write good music. And I know that sounds a bit critical of them, but it really shows. Go and listen to the first album and go listen to this studio album that they brought out, and just the difference in quality is it's staggering. Because I mean, the first album was really good, but this album was amazing. When 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge came out, it sold. I'll put it to this way: it became platinum less than a year and a half after it came out. It's up to now, it sold over 1 million copies in the US, and worldwide it sold 3 million. June 8th, 2004 is the date that it came out. It came out on, I believe they're called Enterprise, Reprise Records. That is a record label that it came out on. It's a subsidiary of Warner Brothers. Fun fact about Reprise Records: Frank Sinatra discovered this record label. Just it has nothing to do with My Chemical Romance, but just a little fact there for you. Yeah. Just the impact that I feel like this had on their career, in terms of, obviously you had this, and then they went on to make the more successful The Black Parade, which is probably the most well-known album they made. But for me, this has like a special place in my heart, because it holds 2 of my favourite MCR songs on here, of course being I'm Not Okay and Helena. And I think that it gets overlooked sometimes, because obviously you do have The Black Parade, and and apart from that, a lot of people go, "Oh, it's My Chemical Romance," are just written off, and I don't really know why. You see a lot of hate in the community, especially from the more fair weather fans of pop punk. For some reason, My Chemical Romance is seen as sort of a joke band, and that sounds so harsh. I didn't even really want to use that phrase, but that's the sort of stuff that I see from the community, to be quite honest with you. And I really don't think it's deserved, because not only do they have bangers, let's just name the popular ones that everybody knows. Not only do they have I'm Not Okay and Teenagers and The Black Parade, I think obviously Helena, but if you listen to the albums, just the amount of quality that are on these albums are really good. Obviously, this album does have I'm Not Okay and Helena on it, which are the main pillars of this album. It actually starts with Helena, and then halfway through you get to I'm Not Okay. But in between that are just like hidden gems that you wouldn't find on the radio, or you wouldn't find being playing in clubs if you didn't listen to the album and actually went to look for it myself. I think it's defo worth a look, and I really do think people who criticize My Chemical Romance should take a step back and maybe go and look at the depth that are in these albums, because especially in this one, and then obviously the Black Parade, that the quality in writing definitely increased from the first studio album. This being the second studio album that they brought out, I thought it was a massive leap in quality. But let's just get straight into it. Producer on this was Mark Benson. Mark Benson, if you don't know, is probably in terms of like rock, one of the biggest producers out there. He's been there for a long time as well. He started in 1986. Just naming some of the bands that he's worked with, he produced most of Motorhead's most popular albums all the way through the 90s, even into the 2000s. If you want to talk about bands that he's worked with recently, obviously My Chemical Romance, he produced this one in 2004, but as I believe as recent as 2018, he worked with Escape the Fate, and he also worked with Of Mice and Men. You might know Of Mice and Men if you're a wrestling fan, which I am. I know Of Mice and Men because they have some songs that are on the on the background of some wrestling shows, but I've gone to listen to them, and they also produce quality music as well. But back to My Chemical Romance, the album starts with Helena, and it really sets off the story of this album, because this album has an interesting story behind it. Gerard Way, the lead singer, described it as basically he had this story in his head of these two lovers called the Demolition Lovers, and both of them get gunned down. The man goes to hell without his lover, and he's approached by the devil, and he's made an offer, and the offer is you can see your is his wife? I don't know. I didn't know that bit. His wife, his girlfriend, his whatever, his prostitute. Let's just say that. But no, seriously, he goes to hell, and the devil says, you can see your love again. She's not really dead. Apparently she survived or something like that. But the only way you get to go see her again is you go and bring me 1,000 souls of the evil and the bad. And he accepts the offer, and he takes the gun, and that's basically the story of the album. The story of the album is him obviously committing these like atrocities and everything. Which is really interesting. I didn't know that until I looked into this. I didn't know this before I started doing the research. Before I started doing this research for this album, I just thought it was a really cool, artwork on the front. But it makes a lot more sense, because I always thought it was like an amazing piece of artwork on the actual album. It's quite iconic, and I use that word a lot in terms of when I've been doing these intro videos. But it's really iconic. You've got two sort of like lovers just staring into each other's eyes, like, and it's like sort of cartoony and sort of like, let's say like a manga sort of artwork, but it's got like blood sort of on the front of the faces and all over the front of the album, which is, I thought it was really striking when I first saw it. I thought it was like a really interesting piece that the designer decided to put on this. But knowing the story now, it makes a lot more sense. Obviously, it starts with Helena. And I suppose this is the start of the story. And to be quite honest with you, now that I know this story, it's added another layer to this album that I didn't know, and it's added a little bit more to the enjoyment of the songs, because now that it's not just, obviously it's well written music, but now there's a purpose, and there's a reason behind, let's just say, the layout of the album, because you've got Helena, which is the start, and obviously saying so long a good night in the chorus, and you've got to think that's when they first lose each other. And the end song, I'll get to that a bit later, but sorry, the end song is saying we're gonna get reunited, basically. I mean, he doesn't come out and actually say that, but that's the vibe that you actually get from the song. What I'll talk about as well is this is the last album that I don't know if I'm saying this right. Forgive me if I don't say this right. This is the last album that the drummer Matt Policia or Policia. I'm not sure how you actually say his name. This is the last album that he worked on with the guys. Apparently, he was asked to leave the group, and it's never been confirmed. But this is the story that goes around. It's alleged that he burnt the original van that they used to tour in, that Gerard and Mikey's grandmother gave him. It's the first start, going around the country and making music, and which is interesting. If it's true, I hope it wasn't intentional. But yeah, he was asked to leave the group, and this is the last album that you'll see him on. He was replaced later on. But yeah, as I say, I said this about 3 times, and let's get into the actual music on the album. And the first song, Helena, which by the way is probably my personal favorite MCR song. So I'm gonna try and not be biased. I'm gonna try and not be biased and just try and like give you an actual review of this album. You've got Helena, which the video is amazing. Just the music, the guitar and the bass in this song. Obviously, you got Gerard with his amazing vocals, his iconic voice, is the way he comes across on all the MCR songs is amazing all the time. In my mind, probably the most recognizable voice. Ooh, that is a because you got Blink-182 as well, haven't you? But yeah, in my mind, he's probably the first or second most recognizable voice in pop punk, 100%. Just because of the way he comes across in every single album that he's done. And his whole character, he's got sort of like a Marilyn Manson sort of vibe going on. You see that in the video. But yeah, moving swiftly on from Helena, you've got Give 'Em Hell Kid, which is one of my picks for this album, like a sleeper. Because, as I say, you do hear about I'm Not Okay, and you hear about Helena, and you hear about Thank You for the Venom, which were probably the 3 biggest singles that came off this album. Give 'Em Hell Kid is probably one of my favourite songs in this album, mainly just because... as I say, it's not really given the love that I think it deserves. Mainly because, as I say, like a lot of people do just write MCR off as a bit of a meme when it comes to the when it comes to the music that they bring out. I don't know why. And these are obviously not my views. These is just what I've heard over the years. Like especially when I first started listening to him. One of the first songs that I heard was Teenagers. And I heard a lot of people going, "Oh, that's the only song that they've got," and I was like, "Is it?" And I didn't know that because, as I say, at the time I was pretty naive and I didn't really know pop punk, and I was just getting into it. And that was the first song I'd heard by MCR, and I was like, "Is it? Is it the only song that I've got?" I'm not gonna lie, for a while until I started looking into him, that's what I believed. I was like, "All right, okay," and then obviously I found this album and I found all the other work that they did. All the other projects that they'd worked on, and just the accolades that they'd won. As I say, this is platinum, and then the Black Parade went on to be, I think it was like double plat or triple platinum. But yeah, that's what I hear. Another thing, speaking of the album that I hear from this, is a massive punk inspiration on this album, 100%. If it was to put a nail on it in terms of punk wise, I would definitely say inspiration from this would be Sex Pistols sort of vibe that I hear. You hear the Kinks as well, the Buzzcocks. That's more of a bit of a British inspiration, a British inspired punk beat, especially in the background with the drums and the guitar. Really well done, in my opinion. I think, as I say, this is where I really think they started to hit the stride. MCR 100% when they made this album. I do think that it's quite underrated. And speaking of underrated, once again, moving on to the end, the next song on this album, After Give 'Em Hell, really good. I'm not gonna go like really in depth into every single song because I'd be here all day. I mean, even though the album itself is just under 40 minutes, it's filled with a lot of bangers, and I feel like it's one of those albums where you could finish it because it's so short and then start it again and just enjoy it again. Mainly because, as I say, like maybe you didn't know the story that I've just told you. Maybe go and listen to the album now that I've told you that story, and you'll get a different perspective on it. I certainly did when I was doing the research for this. Where was I up to? Yeah, you've got I'm Not Okay. But before that, you've got Wait, what? Oh yeah, you got to the end, and then as I say, like there's a lot of songs in this album like with a lot of like really long titles. But I'm just gonna say it really quick. You know what they do? That is just after the end, and then I'm not okay. I promise. I really wanted to get, as you can tell, I'm pretty excited to get to this actual song, because this song is once again got a story behind it. When he was interviewed in I think it was 2005, about a year after this album came out, Gerard Way actually said it was sort of a self-help song, as well as being really catchy and having a bit of like a mainstream appeal, which it did. It debuted in the Billboard Top 100 and hit 86 on the Billboard Top 200. But yeah, he said it's sort of for the outcasts of the fan base, and the people that are going through some stuff. It was a bit of like a self-help pop song. That's how he described it. I thought that was really interesting the way he described it. I do also want to say he's quite multi-talented, Gerard. Like really multi-talented. After this, I'll go a little bit into what impact this had on the group and where they all went after this album, obviously, and after they broke up in 2013. But yeah, just listening to a couple of interviews that he did, it's quite interesting to what he's got to say about his albums. He always goes into, this isn't just a pop punk album. This isn't just music to just take in. It's got a story behind it, and I think hearing them stories and hearing him speak about how passionate he is about his work, it really does the band a lot of justice, because it's there's not a lot of groups out there that put that much work into the whole concept of making an album. Obviously, you've got some people who come out and they've got a couple of hits on that album, and then when you listen to the rest of it, it's kind of trash, and there's a reason why nobody else talks about them songs. But as I say, it's really underappreciated, and I really think you should listen to this work again, 100% after you've listened to me, of course. I want to talk about some of my favourite songs that are on this album. I do want to talk about some of the picks that I've got off this, like, because you've as I say, you've got the three singles that came out on this. You had Helena, you had Thank You for the Venom, and you had I'm Not Okay, and those are really good. But the two ending songs on this, at Cemetery Drive and I'd Never Told You What I Do for a Living, really good bangers, absolute bangers. I forgot how good these two singles were. Really good. I was really impressed by. I keep saying this, but like the depth on this album, and I still don't understand. Like you get even like really in deep people who are really into this genre of music saying quite negative stuff about My Chemical Romance, and I just think it's interesting. But as I say, like there's not much to talk about in terms of time wise on this album, just because it is quite short. But that, as I say once again, and I do say this every week about an album that I've talked about on this show, don't take my word for it. My words won't do it justice. Go back and listen to this album, and if you've never heard it, and if you're not a fan of pop punk, like I wasn't when I first heard of him, go and listen to him. Just go and give him a chance. Like you might be sat here thinking, oh, I'm not even into this sort of music, or I'm not a fan of this music whatsoever. But maybe that's just because you haven't heard that one song that will get you into it. Everyone's got that one song that gets you into a type of music. Like for example, when I first started listening to pop punk, it was mainly Blink and MCR that got me into it. And when I was listening to hip hop, one of the first people that got me into it was Eminem. The first single I ever owned was just Lose It, and then it was Get Rich or Die Trying. So there's always time to get into a new type of music. There's always time to get into something different. Like 100%, I would recommend anybody to listen to this. Like no matter what. I mean, even if you're a fan of 70s music, like as I say, like early punk, it's very punk inspired. If you're a fan of the Sex Pistols, if you're a fan of the Kinks, if you're a fan of any band from that era, it's got a lot of inspiration from that sort of era, and it takes a lot of ideas and the way that music sounded and puts it into this album, along with, you know, combining that with the pop punk that was out at the time. So 100% definitely, like, I 100% recommend going and listen to it. It's really good. In terms of my favorite song on this album, I mean, I'm not going to mention I'm Not Okay and Helena again. Like, I'm going to pretend that this is an album without those two songs, because it would be unfair to judge this album and say, oh, they're my favourite songs, because they will be your favourite songs. There's a reason why I'm Not Okay and Helena are massively embedded into the history of emo pop punk, because they're so iconic, and they're so loved by the community that do love MCR, and you know, by the people, in my opinion, actually like music and don't just judge a band on, you know, two songs or one song. But if I'm gonna say one song that I really like on this album, and I have previously mentioned it, but if I'm gonna say a favorite one, I would probably say I Never Told You What I Did for a Living, because I think it's really good, like 100%. I think it'd be a toss up between either that one or Give 'Em Hell Kid. And that's a little bit more well known in the community, but I do think Give 'Em Hell Kid is a fantastic song, and that's definitely inspired by, as I say, like the 70s punk vibe. After this, they would go on to make the Black Parade, which would garner them probably the biggest success they've had in the career. They'd continue to 2013, where they would eventually split up, not for any reason why they'd fell out or anything. It was more of, they've been going for so long, they've been going for 12 years, and they didn't really want to get stale, which I suppose you can respect, because, you know, you do get them bands, and you do get those artists that do carry on and outstay the welcome, and, you know, they start releasing music that's not the best caliber that they've brought out in their career. But yeah, 100%, a little bit, like, a couple of interesting, like, tidbits about the actual people who, you know, when they left. Let's just, like, talk about Gerard first. Gerard Way actually went on to obviously have his own music, and it debuted in the, I think one of his albums that he made, he debuted in the top 200 Billboard by himself, which is pretty impressive. But another thing that was more impressive that he actually did was he went on to write. He went on to be a writer for Marvel, and I don't know if you've seen, I think it's on Netflix, The Umbrella Corporation, I think it is. Go and watch that on Netflix. He was one of the writers on that TV show. I did not know that. Once again, I didn't know that. I knew that he went off and went solo a little bit, and I knew that he went, you know, to do his own little thing. But I thought that was really interesting. Who else have you got on here? You've got, I've mentioned, I'm only going to be talking about the people that were working on this album. So obviously I mentioned the drummer Matt that left the group after this. I'm going to want to talk about Ray Toro. Ray Toro, after the band split up, he went by himself to make his own little bit of music. He had a bit of success as well. He went on to have a child. Congratulations. I know it's a little bit, you know, it was a bit earlier than now, but congratulations. He said he wouldn't have had the chance to have a child because he was on tour with the band so much. So it was sort of a good thing that, you know, he got to sort of take that break and spend more time with his family. Mikey Way, who is Gerard's brother, it was a little bit more of a sadder story. Apparently when the band broke up, he was going through a divorce at the time, and obviously, you know, the breaking up of his friends and the band didn't really help him either, and he started to self-medicate. He did go on to get some help for that, but I suppose that's probably the saddest one. Probably the saddest story that comes out of MCR breaking up, just because, you know, he really got a bit of a raw deal, I suppose. Frank Iero did go on to make his own music as well. I believe he started his own band, but he was actually in quite a bad crash a couple of years ago. He was in quite a bad accident in terms of he got him and the group that he was with got hit by a bus. I believe he was in a car, and at one point he said he was under the bumper of this bus and he didn't know if anyone else was going to die. He didn't know if anyone else was going to die in the accident, because apparently it was so bad. But he couldn't hear anybody, you know, screaming or anything, so he did think he was the only one alive. and he said if anyone else was alive, then it wasn't going to be much longer because how bad it was. But yeah, that's that's a different story for a different day if you want to talk about him a little bit more. But yeah, that's crazy. But yeah, he went on. He recovered. Fair enough. Good for him. I want to talk about what happened this year because they were supposed to reunite and go on this massive tour. I believe they did at Coachella last year in 2019, and then obviously that spanned into like a massive following of people who came back to MCR and wanted him to come together. It was rumored for a long time, but all the band members were like, we're doing our own thing. We're enjoying what we're doing as singles artists. As obviously, as I say, Gerard was writing for Marvel, so they all had their own little gigs going on, and they was enjoying it. So they didn't really feel the need, like they didn't feel like they had to reunite. But eventually, as they did. And this whole thing that's going on at the minute is, it's pretty tragic because they've just had to cancel the tour that they was on in England, which is a bit of a shame. But yeah, guys, as I say, that's all I really wanted to talk about with this album. It's a really good album. I definitely recommend you go and check it out 100%. This is probably going to be a shorter episode of the intro that you're probably more used to. Like the other ones was 40 minutes, and this is just a little bit shorter. But as I say, it's a short album, and it'll give you time to go and listen to it more. Please like the group on Facebook, Charttopper Radio. Same name on Instagram. Please go give us a follow. If you like this video, give it a like. Subscribe to the channel. Share it with your friends. Tell all your mates. If they're into pop punk, let them know that I'm talking about pop punk. I'm going to be talking about pop punk again next week. And I'm not going to reveal the album that I'm going to be talking about now, but I will reveal it. I will reveal it on the podcast on Saturday, so make sure you check that out as well. As I say, guys, what's going on right now? Stay safe. I really hope you have a good week. If you're in work, I hope you have a good day in work. If you're at home, isolating, go and listen to my shit. Go and listen to all my shit. I've got about 3 weeks worth of it now. I've been putting in a lot of effort into this channel, trying to make it good. I'm gonna keep continuing to add more content to this channel. Eventually, I'm gonna get a cam, and you're gonna be able to see my gorgeous face. So, that's just another addition to the channel that I want to give you. As I say, like, subscribe, share, follow the groups, and as Gerard Way says, and as MCR says, so long and good night. So long and good night. Take care, guys.